Hi everyone, it's Becky here. So welcome to another new video on my YouTube channel. I hope you're enjoying a great summer so far. So this is the second part of my day trip to Yaletown, Vancouver. So in my previous video, I showed you how I sketched this view in front of me of the quayside and the cityscape on the other side of the water. Now I'm turning around and finding a new view behind me, which is really inspiring. This tree here on the left hand side, the lawn illuminated by the sunshine, the charming greens, wonderful contrast here of various levels of greens. And yeah, it's a really peaceful place and calming colors to be recorded. So yeah, so that's my first sketch and my lunch sketch on the bottom of the page on the left. So I'm really enjoying my time here and I don't want to go home yet. So I just took a little quick 15-minute break and now I'm ready to do another sketch here on the upper part of the right hand page. So I like to contemplate the view in front of me for like about 2 minutes, thinking about the composition, the sizes and placements of all the major elements before I put the first lines on paper. So yeah, I always like to be thoughtful in the beginning, thinking about how big that I should be drawing. I'm not going to be doing a full page sketch. So yeah, just playing with the size. You don't have to be too ambitious. We don't have to do a super grand full page sketch all the time. So my sketch is going to be about the same size as the quayside one on the left side. So here I am drawing a frame. So this video is playing at real-time speed. So the drawing and painting process that you'll be watching is going to be in real-time speed without editing. If you want to speed up the drawing process, you can change the setting of the YouTube player to 2 times or 4 times faster as you like. So here is my rectangular frame, and first of all I want to get the foreground element settled down here on the very left side. So trying to figure out how big I should be drawing this tree so I have enough space for the buildings in the background and also enough space for the grassy area. This is the gap in between the 2 boles of the tree and another gap, so seeing the negative spaces. And when we're sketching a foreground element, of course we don't have to sketch the whole part of it, so only sketching a section of this tree from the middle part to the lower part, not all the way down to the root. Now I'm adding these interesting lines of branches sort of overlapping with one another there behind. So this is the general outline of part of the tree. Adding another little branch there on the right hand side. At the same time, I'm also using thicker ink lines to accentuate these gap areas, just so there's more interest. And when I'm editing this video, I didn't turn the background sound off because I want to really create a really nice virtual traveling experience for you, that you're being with me here at Yaletown by the quayside, enjoying this beautiful summer day together. So yeah, so there were seagulls honking nearby. There are actually a lot of Canada geese wandering around the park. Now I'm adding very gentle loose lines to the bark of the tree using gentle hand pressure, trying to follow the rhythm that I see on the surface of the bark. So when we're sketching, I always believe that it's not so important to capture the exact physical look of that thing, like all the details in the exact same place. But what's most important is to capture the rhythm of those details. and at the same time to capture the spirit of that object. So when people are looking at an artwork, they probably won't judge like if you included every single line on that tree bark. What they're gonna see is to whether if you captured the feel of nature and how you captured it very effectively with sensations and using powerful lines and then colors. So the details on the surfaces of organic things, I think each of them had a really unique rhythm. You just have to look deeply and feel the flow of those lines and shapes together rather than trying to capture every single line that's on there. So as you can see, of course, I'm not really copying, but really feeling, I'm summarizing the rhythm that I see on the tree trunk. As you can see, even though I am not copying exactly what's in front of me, at the same time, I am not really drawing from preconceptions. All of these lines are in harmony and looking pretty realistic because I really paid attention to the flow of nature on the surface of the tree trunk. So over the past 5 minutes or so, the drawing experience was really eye-opening and refreshing for me. It's kind of like looking at a tree for the very first time, see how it grows, see how the sap in there is flowing around the inside. Even though I cannot see the inside, I could kind of feel it through the texture of the tree trunk on the exterior. So now I'm just adding a bit of accentuation around the outline and also division between the boles. There are roughly about 3 large boles for this tree, and that's very much it. Now I see a group of Canada geese passing by, and they're looking really lovely, so I want to capture them in my sketchbook. So one of the differences between taking photos and sketching from real life observation is that we're able to capture more than one single moment in our sketches. And now I just drew the goose leading the group. So most of the neck and head area is black with a white patch on the cheek. So that's the first one. I have a few more to add on the right side of the tree, starting with the head, the long neck, the body, which is kind of like a leaf shape with pointy tail there in the end, and then shading some of the areas that are dark brown feathers, drawing that tiny little white patch on the cheek, and then most of the face and the neck areas are black, the typical characteristics of Canada geese, and then shading that a little bit around the belly, drawing the feet. Okay, and now moving on to the next one beside it. Right, so these geese are like walking in very much the same gestures. This one, the neck is a little shorter because the body is actually twisted around. The neck is getting a little foreshortened, and the body is looking more chubby than the one seen from the side. Again, the same way, using hatching lines to shade the feather areas a little bit to give the body more volume. Alright, so now I am seeing and thinking where I should put the horizontal line of the lawn area. It's right around the face, going through the faces of these geese. This is the end of the lawn area. And now I'm ready to draw the middle ground and the background details. So there in the middle ground, there is a concrete pavilion. So I just drew the top and these columns supporting the top part, the ring area. So yeah, so there are a lot of concrete columns making up this circular shaped pavilion. and drawing the columns on the other side more vaguely. So now adding a bit of accentuation and then gentle hatching to give this pavilion a more sense of 3 dimension. So roughly this pavilion is in the shape of a cylinder. Accentuation for the top so we can see it even better. Now it's time to move on to the next major thing in this little landscape cropping. Yeah, just want to give this tree trunk more accentuation because in the foreground the outline could look thicker. So now I am pausing and thinking about the next thing that I should be drawing. Ooh, so now I want to draw these smaller branches and twigs coming down from the top part of the tree. So just to make this tree look more lively. And again, trying to draw those ones that I see that are the most interesting. And one more little branch and twig on the upper left side, gently flowing down in nice little curves. And one more here to add balance. Okay, so now I am pausing again to think about the next major object that I need to draw. I see more trees, bushes, and also the apartment buildings in the very back. So in between the pavilion and the apartment buildings, I see this little forest of bushes and trees. So these are like very chubby cone shapes. So these abstract lines are the walkway underneath the forest and the border of the quayside. And adding a few people walking there, a bit of texture for the trees, using very simple and wriggly lines. When I'm doing urban sketches, I love to include a lot of nature objects like trees and bushes, bodies of water, for a pretty large area of sky rather than just dry buildings. So now I'm tracing out the contour outline of this little forest in the middle ground. In general, there's a little bit of overlapping, but pretty easy to see the layers of trees together. So that's the general outline around the top. And now I want to add, some people having a good time with us together, walking around the park. So drawing this man, it also gives a sense of juxtaposition that the geese in the foreground are larger than this man. And also the lamp post over here that I'm drawing. So when I'm doing, sketching on location, I like to play around with, proportions and juxtapositions. Things in the distance, they look very tiny compared to the ones in the foreground. It adds so much drama this way. And another tiny little lamppost far in the back. So I'm showing you this real-time video just so you know that I don't draw super rapidly like a machine. I need time to pause and think about my next step. So now I'm drawing these trees and bushes in the front layer of the forest. And I'm going to add the rest of the definitions of the foliage using paint. Now I'm ready to draw these apartment buildings, very modern, with a lot of glassy windows and balcony areas. So I believe this one is a balcony on the side of that building. So drawing these glassy apartment buildings, it really adds a sense of space. So the Yaletown area of Vancouver is a really nice combination of nature and modern cityscapes. So here in the foreground, the middle ground, I have nature, and there in the back, I have modern apartment buildings. And now I am tracing out the vertical line of another apartment building. So again, this is just the bottom quarter of that tall apartment building. So the other side and the left side of another one. So here I'm just including about 3 separate buildings. So again, when we're doing urban sketching, we don't have to include buildings and other structures from the very top to the very bottom. And now it's about simplifying the inner details of these glassy panels of various sizes. So here's my simplifying process. I just divided this building into roughly 3 columns. For each column, I see these repeating horizontal lines. And then some smaller units of little vertical lines. So drawing modern skyscrapers are actually not so difficult if you really change your mindset, is to divide them into larger units and then bigger units and then smaller units. So now moving on to this middle column over here, drawing these short horizontal lines very loosely because I don't want to make them way too strong and come forward to compete with the foreground details. Again, almost no hand pressure, just gliding the pen on the paper to get these short vertical lines done. So again, the difficulty level of drawing these skyscrapers is not that high. All we need is, is patience. Now I'm actually drawing this little column of balcony areas on the side, and then some more loose horizontal lines. And you can relax, you don't have to fill every single little slab with these short vertical lines. So you could omit some areas and just let the viewers to imagine the rest of the details. Okay, I think now it's time to move on to the next one. I think this is actually the right side of this apartment building. So now just drawing these lines, not letting them going down to follow the strict rule of perspective. And again, using my patience to get these tiny little vertical lines done. So there's a school and children's playground around. As you can hear, there are a lot of children's chatters and laughters. So yeah, this place is not too quiet, but pretty entertaining and engaging for me to keep sketching this kind of tedious details. So these lines on the very right side of this building, it looks more concentrated because we're looking at this side from an angle. Now I'm ready to add a pattern for this apartment building. Again, dividing this building into large columns first, and then these quick loose lines of actually squares. This one had a different pattern compared to the one in the middle. Yeah, mostly just squares vertically in each column. And just taking my time to get these little squares done. Okay, that's very much it. Now I'm ready to move back on to drawing the details for the organic areas, like the lawn. I think I need a bit of texture for the grass blades. Oh, just find a bit of accentuation there on the side. The balcony platforms sticking out. Bit accentuation for the outline on the left. Adding one more little tree there in the back. Now I am moving to the lawn area and using gentle hand pressure and short organic lines to depict the feel of grass blades. So again, when you're sketching grass, you don't have to draw every single grass blade within that lawn area. So here I'm just drawing, very limited numbers and not every single row. And that's pretty much it now. I think just drew someone in the far distance under the forest. It's just a little bit more, but not all of the grass blades. Yeah, so because this lawn area is very much a large area in the foreground, middle ground area, and needs more details to attract more attention, to add more weight to this sketch. So my style of sketching with ink pen and then painting watercolors on top is that for the ink line drawing stage, I don't finish everything in the most amount of detail. So for these trees, I don't really add a lot of leaf texture. Maybe just the trunk and the branches in the middle of these foliage shapes. And I'm going to use watercolors to depict the levels of greens. And I like to leave a sense of incompleteness at this stage, and leave the rest of the image rendering for watercolors. So just adding final bit of lines, and that's it for the line drawing stage. Now I'm ready to paint watercolors to really bring this little landscape to life. And this watercolor painting process is going to be in real-time speed as well. So first of all, I'm going to just wet very much the whole area with clear water, so it's easier for the paint to spread out very smoothly and in a transparent way. So the most important quality of watercolors is to take advantage of its transparent quality by mixing a good amount of water into it rather than using the dry chalky paint. Okay, so I think I'm going to begin with the really attractive lawn area. So just grabbing a little bit of lemon yellow, mix it with lime green for the very top part of the grass, illuminated by the sunshine. As I always mentioned in my previous tutorial videos, it's so important to start with the most vibrant colors or the warm colors first in the watercolor painting, and also blending on a little bit of yellow ochre as well. The painting process is always very open-ended, so just follow your sensations of combining like more than one color together. Okay, so that's the most vibrant color in here. Now I'm just tackling the little forest area. Again, a very similar color, a yellow-green. When I'm painting watercolors, I'm in no rush at all. I am actually taking my time. I like to start with the lightest tones first. So yellow and also yellow-green is actually the lightest tone if we change all of the colors into grayscale. So the yellow is actually the lightest gray on a gray value scale. And it's very important for us to know the steps that we're taking in this painting process to avoid a lot of awkward moments, to really know that where we're going. So now I am doing wet onto wet, blending some mid-tones of green. So this is very much a Viridian green, straight from my Etchr watercolor palette, blended onto the bottom part of the lawn area, containing a lot of mid-tones and shade tones, and using thin brush strokes to follow my drawing of those rows of grass blades to create a sense of relief on the soft grassy area. Because grass is never flat. There's a slight bit of variety in terms of elevation throughout the whole lawn area. And also playing with water control. So some brushstrokes might be containing more pigment, some other brushstrokes might be containing more water. So in this way, I am creating a sense of depth for grass. They are in very thick layers, so that means your colors has to be pretty concentrated, but not way too thick. All right, so if you're using good quality watercolors, your paint should look juicy and with pretty saturated colors, and at the same time not too chalky looking. Now I am punching on some mid-tones of green for the forest here. This is a mix of lime green and Viridian green. And when I'm punching this mid-tone of greens on, I am preserving the shape of my brush strokes. Like some of the little dot is showing, right? So I'm not really flattening these down. These little brush marks is really helping to give an illusion of depth for these trees. For this area, the forest, I see more dark tones of greens. So this is more of a viridian green mixed in with a little bit of burnt sienna. So I like to mix burnt sienna into viridian green to give a bit of shade color. And a little bit of grass relief for the far distance lawn area. When I'm punching these mid and dark tones of green, I'm also leaving the top ring area of these trees preserved, not covered with any mid or dark tones, because the sun is shining and the top part of these trees are illuminated. Now it's time for some bold brushstrokes of shade tones. So again, I mix my own shade of green by mixing burnt sienna into viridian green. So the key to a fresh looking watercolors is to just use punches of brushstrokes rather than stirring the layers of colors around and making mud. So yes, as you can see, I'm just adding these quick punches, sometimes in almost little dots, to get the colors on there without stirring or muddling too much. Alright, so now I think that's it for the greeneries. It's time to move on to painting the sky. So I'm just gonna re-wet those gaps in between the apartment buildings, those sky areas, with clear water, and just simply grabbing some cerulean blue, diluted with quite a bit of water. Again, the sky should be always a translucent tone like this, not a solid blue. And I think that's it for the sky. I want a little bit of flow of air, more turbulence. Just quickly punching on some more cerulean blue containing less water. So I have roughly 2 tones or values of blues interacting with each other in the sky. And then it's time to move on without muddling too much. I just wetted the tree trunk area with clear water. I'm going to begin with the lightest tone of yellow-brown. So this is burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of yellow ochre and a tiny bit of orange. So the color of the sunshine is changing the original tones of objects a lot. So on an overcast day, the color of the tree trunk is going to look very different from this bright sunny day. So I believe there's going to be a lot of mid-browns and dark sepias on this tree trunk on a rainy day or an overcast day. Alright, so now I'm going to leave that first layer of the tree trunk color to dry. While waiting for that to dry, I'm painting the first layer for the glassy apartment buildings. It's very similar to the color of the sky. So it's a play of cerulean blue and lime green. So it's like an interplay of blues and turquoise. And again, I'm keeping the tone of the blue for the building really transparent because it's glassy. And I just added a little bit of diluted yellow ochre for the pavilion there in the middle ground. And now I'm mixing a little bit of royal purple with cobalt blue and add these tiny little punches for the shaded areas behind the pavilion and underneath the forest. Okay, now I'm just kind of bending the edge of my sketchbook page a little bit because when we're painting watercolors, the paper is going to absorb the water and the tissue of the paper is going to expand. Warping up. Now I'm ready to paint the next layer for the tree trunk. So this is a mix of burnt sienna with a little bit of cobalt blue, containing less water, as you can see, compared to the first layer. and using thin brush strokes, holding my brush almost 90 degrees to the paper to create these thin, refined brush strokes. So sometimes painting feels like drawing as I'm creating these lines with brush. I'm also mixing more cobalt blue into the burnt sienna to get a darker sepia color for certain parts of the tree trunk. If you observe very carefully, you can see multiple levels of browns on a tree trunk, not just one. From the first sight, we could only probably see just one and define the tree trunk as brown only. It contains yellows, yellow oranges, orange browns, sepias, and even darker browns, almost black. There's so much definitions to add to a seemingly simple object. Now I'm using the leftover brown from the tree trunk to paint the feathers of these Canada geese. And grabbing a little bit of leftover green containing less water underneath these geese bodies to give them, their shadows. And a little bit more. Now I think it's time to move on to give more contrast for the glassy apartment buildings there in the back. This one is actually an older one with the brown colored exterior. So I just grabbed the leftover brown. So a lot of the colors left over on my palette that I don't have to mix from scratch again, and just reuse them for other things I'm going to paint in the future. So for this apartment building, I'm actually using the leftover greens on my palette and super diluted, so they look so different from the grass and other greeneries, and also the leftover blue purple super diluted. As you can see, I am not mixing from scratch and just using the leftover colors. Glass is a really reflective surface, reflecting the other colors around its environment. So it just doesn't exist by itself. It's a reflection of the sky and the greeneries around it. Now I think I need to give these trees a bit more contrast, especially on the bottom. It's more darkly shaded. So again, more burnt sienna mixed into the viridian green and tiny choppy brush strokes on the bottom. And at the same time, these trees are also giving shadows to one another. So in between, I also see darkly shaded areas. And again, using small brush strokes, so I'm in good control of how much to add onto without over adding the shade color. And now I think I need to paint the leaves dangling on the branches and twigs of this tree. So this is kind of like impressionistic. It's a mix of lime green and a little bit of viridian green. When we're drawing trees, sometimes we don't have to do the leaves with ink pen. We could simply use little dots of brush marks to get it done, and that saves a lot of time. Yeah, so I think I mentioned this idea when I was painting the pink cherry blossoms in the spring. And yeah, so this is basically the lightest tone and the mid-tones that I see in these leaves. Yeah, just adding these dots very loosely and also merging many of these chunky dots together into one cluster so the brush strokes don't look too harsh. Now it's time for some mid and dark tones. This is like viridian green mixed with a bit of burnt sienna. Again, covering actually most of the area because these leaves are actually facing down away from the sunshine, so most of them are actually shaded from my point of view, looking at the bottom part of these leaves. And again, I'm trying to merge many of these brush strokes together into medium and large clusters, so they don't stand out too much and looking harsh. And paying attention to what I see, leaving some parts unpainted. I think the middle part of this little canopy is pretty bright. Maybe a few shaded leaves here on the bottom part of this little canopy. And in the last 1 minute or so of the painting process, I'm just adding these final bits of details for higher contrast, mostly shade colors for the bottom of these trees in the middle ground. And some of the additions are almost invisible. I am slowing down, pausing, and observing very carefully without trying to add large punch-up brush marks. So these brush marks are very, very tiny, almost invisible. But after like about 1 minute, there will be a slight bit of change for this picture. So the final polishing stage is actually very important. Before I call it done, I just think that I want to add more drama. Yeah, just like these little dots of the shaded glassy areas of the windows. So this is my own mix of blue purple that I mix with royal purple and a little bit of cobalt blue. And tiny little punches for this older building here, using lines to define some of the columns better for the building, using the leftover bluish purple. Yep, for the pavilion, the sun is on the left, the right side of the pavilion is shaded, especially on the canopy there. I think that's very much it for this painting. It's done, so it took me about like 35 minutes. Here's the look of my finished sketch. It took me about 35 minutes to draw and paint, and the other sketch that I did about an hour ago, and a lunch sketch. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. If you like it, please click like and leave me a comment below. Subscribe to my channel for weekly updates. I try to update my channel with 2 to 3 videos every week, and I will see you again very soon next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.